The return authorization general approval screen is used to enter approved quantities in against return authorizations so that a credit note can get created for action codes where a credit note is required, or just for closing off a return authorization when it has gone through the system and the customer is satisfied with your results, and then the return authorization can be purged at that point. So this is basically the closure program for the return authorizations. This is where they're signed off. In our example, we'll query on return authorization number 7, which is one that we've been processing through the system. In the header block here, we see the various information about the return authorization. If we come down to the detail line here, we see the credit quantity. This is the quantity that was entered in on the return authorization in the return authorization entry screen CS2000. The receipt quantity here is displayed. This is the quantity that was received in the receipt entry screen CS2200. If this was an action code on here that did not require a receipt entry, then this field would not have been populated because the receipt entry program would not have been required. Next field is the stock quantity. This field we enter in on this screen, and it allows us to enter in the actual amount of the goods that will be going back into stock. So if we had a damaged good, for example, and we weren't going to receive it back into stock, we could put a 0 in here. We may have received quantities from the customers, but we are not allowing it to go back into stock as the goods were damaged. So in our example here, we'll just put in a stock quantity of 1 because we will be returning it to stock. The approval quantity, if I enter in 2 here, you'll notice that the final flag gets populated with a checkbox. If the credit quantity is equal to the approval quantity, then this final flag automatically gets populated. If the approval quantity was a different quantity, it wouldn't get populated, and if you wanted to populate it, you would have to click to populate this field. The price field is just the default price that comes in from the particular order number, invoice number from the sales analysis history file. This can be overwritten. This will be the price that will be used for return authorizations where a credit note is created. So once we've approved this return authorization and a credit note gets created, this will be the price that will be attached to the detail line on the credit note. So in this example here, we were using an action code where a credit note would get created. So in this case here, when we click on the final flag here, a credit note will be created. If we did not click on the final flag at this point, no credit note would be created, even though we have an action code that does automatically create credit notes. The final flag has to be populated. So in other words, if we found that we had a situation where we decided at the last minute that we were not going to create a credit note, even though we have an action code applied to it that creates a credit note, we can bypass that by leaving the final flag as a null. So in our example here, we'll have the credit note created by saving. And our transaction has now been saved. And if we went to query in the order entry program, we would find that a credit note for this particular customer has been created for the approval quantity of 2. So at this point, we're going to just fast track into the order entry program OE2100. And we'll query on that purchase order number. And what we see here is the credit note has been created for the quantity of 2. You'll notice here that we have 2 detail lines that have been created. Now if we come over into the detailed information pop-up box, we'll see the reason for this is we have different reason codes, and the effect stock flag is set to effect stock for one of the detail lines because we were only receiving one of the two quantities that the customer is getting credited for into stock. So one detail line is created that because it will affect stock with a reason code that affects stock. The other detail line does not affect stock, and it's created with a non-stock reason code. The reason code that gets populated comes from the product group for this particular product. When the affect stock, when it does affect stock, in the example here where it doesn't affect stock, where it's not going back into stock, the reason code, the non-stock reason code from the action code is populated in here. So if we went into action code maintenance CS4040, we would see that the default reason code for non-stock returns is M. That concludes the tutorial now on the return authorization general approval.